Hey, this is Donnie Smith, and in this video I'm going to answer some of your questions that I have on my YouTube channel. Now, I've been telling you I'm going to do some of these live, but I had a lot of questions and I would not have time to do this one live because it's going to take quite a bit of time to answer some of these questions. So let's just go ahead and get started. Fred Jones asks, question, what's the best action to take if I didn't block the primer enough? I put base coat on, now the primer is raised through the base coat. What's the best grit of sandpaper to fix this? And do I wet sand or dry sand? This is my first time doing this. Well, Fred, what it sounds like to me, you know, primer, a lot of times when you spray it on, it goes on real dry. I mean, it's kind of bumpy. If you don't block sand that off good, you know, that is going to kind of show like bumps through the base coat because the primer is real dull. You can't really see the texture. And then you go and put your base coat on it when it's wet, and then you can see all those bumps. I think that's what you're talking about. But yeah, the sanding it down is probably the only way you're going to be able to fix that because those bumps are through the base coat and they're in the primer. So, and I would just final sand it anywhere between 400 and 600. You know, you can sand it with that and have it ready for paint. Now remember that base coat is not very thick, so you are going to sand through that pretty fast. So you'll probably have to, you know, apply several coats of base coat on top of that again. As far as wet or dry, that's just preference. For years I did everything wet sanding with wet or dry paper. I've moved towards dry sanding. If you got a sander like a dual action sander, you know, I'd probably recommend going over it with that and dry. If you're doing it by hand, I'd probably say just go ahead and wet sand it. It kind of depends on, you know, what you're doing. So anyway, yeah, I think your primer just probably went on dry. And a way to prevent that next time is put some guide coat on there. You know, some black guide coat where it will contrast from the primer. And that way, you know, if the guide coat's still on there, it's not perfectly smooth. So that's kind of a visual aid to help you out there. Okay, next question. Sam Warburton says, great video. Can I ask you what air cap and fluid tip you are using on the Tekna? Did you change the cap for each stage of the painting stages? Thanks for the video. And this is the Camaro we was painting, and no, we use the same cap for everything except the clear coat. We use the same gun, and this is a HV30 and it's a 1.3, and he was real comfortable with this gun. So we do have a dedicated gun for waterborne paint, but you know, if you clean it really good, you can use the same gun. So yeah, this is a HV30 1.3, and then I like to use a dedicated gun for clear coat, and we've got an Iwata for that, and it's also a 1.3. And the reason I do like to use a dedicated gun for that, just in case there is a little bit of paint or something in there, you know, when you're spraying that clear, you don't want that to shoot out in the clear accidentally, because once you're clearing, you can't really come back and fix it too good. Like base, you can allow it to flash and maybe denib it or whatever, but once clearing, I like to have a gun that I just spray clear coat. No, you don't have to. You could use the same gun for everything, but this is a, you know, if you can afford a clear coat gun, I would recommend that. Mark D says, hi Donnie, thanks for sharing your video. I'm just looking for some guidance. I have a mate helping me with a bare metal 2K Valspar metallic full resto on a 1964 XM Falcon. We have experienced this misfortune of our base and clear not hardening, and it can be torn off like vinyl once I get a razor blade under it. We used 1K etch primer on bare metal, then Valspar HS35 surfacer, blocked it with 400, and then primed that with etch primer again. Rubbed it back with 600 and applied base clear. I now realize we should not have primed with 1K etch primer again, but the problem had happened before the insides of the doors. Without using the etch primer, it comes off easy, and the high build primer surfacer seems to be very smooth after the paint is torn off. Thanks again on the great video. So yeah, if you already primed the bare metal with self-etch primer and then you put primer surfacer and sanded that down, probably the next step I would have done is just put primer sealer. You know, sand it down, get it in the booth, get it masked off, and you can apply sealer. That does not have to be sanded. and you just let it flash the correct amount of time, and then you put your base coat straight on top of that, and then your clear coat. It sounds like to me you've kind of sandwiched some stuff in there, and if you don't wait if stuff's not drying properly, and that's what this sounds like, it didn't dry, kind of rubbery, kind of like vinyl, and I think that's just caused by not allowing each layer to flash off properly. You might have rushed through the base coat and clear coat steps. That etch primer, it has acid in it. I don't know if that had anything to do with it being etch primer and then a primer surfacer and etch primer on top of that. Yeah, next time I would just put, if you've already got it primed out and blocked and there's no bare metal, you know, I would just go ahead and put primer sealer on top of that. But I think this is a drying problem. We're not enough time in between coats, and it just kind of traps all those solvents in there, and it doesn't dry properly. And that's something, be sure and read your technical data sheet that you do allow the proper flash time in between coats, because that can cause a lot of problems, a lot of different types of problems. So be sure that you read that and allow flash times. And that's what it sounds like the problem is to me, is just not allowing that to happen. Richard Benson says, great video, but do you have a link to this spray gun? And I did send the link, but this is the question I need your help with. How does it compare to the Fuji models? And you know, I really don't know. I've never used it, never sprayed with one of the Fuji models, and I was hoping maybe one of you have some experience with that, and maybe you could leave a comment and let us know how it compares. And he's comparing it to this Tekna gun. So if you could let us know kind of your thoughts on that, if you're familiar with that. I've never used that one. Andy's Doghouse says, great video. When you say waterborne, do you mean that the paint is thinned with water? I am new to this, so I want to learn everything I can. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, the waterborne paint, it is a waterborne, like latex, like your house paint. You know, it's kind of the same technology. I know house paint, you know, you can do with tap water, but you don't want to use tap water in this. It's a special water they sell. You know, whether you could use, you know, bottled water or not, I don't know. I wouldn't chance it. But they sell a water, it's pH balanced, and it may have some things in it. I'm not real sure, but it is a water-based thinner. So, good question. Thanks for asking. And Charles Locklear asks, can I sand down a factory paint job and then spray a single stage of paint over it without priming first? Thanks. And yes, the answer is that you don't have to use a primer sealer. I mean, there are some benefits to it. You know, it helps with durability, and you know, helps with color hiding. But if you got a factory paint job and you just sand it down, and you're not have any repairs that you're having to work on, so there's, you know, it should be all uniform to start with. So primer sealer is not required. Primer surfacer, that is only for if you repair something, if you do any body work, you feather edged anything, or went down to bare metal. You know, for those reasons you're going to use the primers. The primer sealer, you know, you're going to use to make it all one color, one uniform color again. But to answer your question, there are some benefits to primer sealer. I think that's what the one is referring to as sealer, and you do not have to use that. If you get it sanded down good, 400 to 600, you can paint your you can spray your base coat straight on top of that. And Mac Skylar asks, glad I know body work in paint. How much for the can or a gallon? And he's talking about that new body filler, and you know, that's pretty new. I don't know if that's out on the market yet. It may be. If anyone has bought some, you might leave us a comment below, but that just came out in November at SEMA, so it may be in the stores now. But as far as cost, I really don't have a clue on the cost of that. Another video or another question says, what tape is that? And in this video, I'm masking off some stuff, some stripes or some flames and things like that, and I'm using a 3M fine line tape. It's the blue tape. So if you just Google 3M fine line, that will probably, you know, get you what you need to know, or go to the auto parts store and ask for, you know, 3M fine line tape. And it does. It works really well for stripes and flames and things like that. And the last question comes from Daryl Cox. Hey Donnie, I'd like to put a matte finish on my truck after painting it. My question is this: how do you fix an area in the matte finish if you have a bug or lint or something in the finish? Without being able to cut and buff a matte finish, how do you take care of something like that? Thanks. You're the best. So, and that's another one. I don't know if there is an answer to that. That's another one we'll have to throw out there. Maybe some of you had experience with that, but you are right. I mean, if you sand and buff an area like a denibbed, it's going to look different. I mean, it's going to be glossy in that area, and I think that is the drawback to the mats is there really isn't a way to fix paint imperfections like runs and dirt and all those things you're talking about. So. If someone has experience and has been able to fix like a run or some dirt, be sure and leave a comment below. But I really don't think there is an answer to that. So that is the drawback to using that one. So just my advice is just to clean extra good, clean your paint booth, and just try not to have any dirt around. And the good, it's not got its full gloss, so the dirt's not going to show up as bad as it would like on a normal paint job, a glossy, paint job. But yeah, to answer the question, I don't think there is an answer to that. But you never know. Maybe someone out there has a trick that they can tell us about. So anyway, that wraps up this Q&A. And one of these days I will get the live Q&A going. But like I said, time I got all these answered, and then if I did get questions, we just wouldn't have time to do all that. I tried to keep these not being, from being too long. So. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video. If you like this video, then be sure and subscribe and help me reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers. And also click the bell to get notified of new videos.